Hey, this is the Bun Mom Life with me, Jessie, and my three buns, Rue, Linus, and Timo. You may know us from our Instagram account, Little Loppy Rue, and we're here to share with you our journey as a bun family. Let's hop to it! Hello, bun friends! Welcome to the first episode of the Bun Mom Life. We're so excited to be here with all of you. If you're from our Instagram bun community, thank you so much for joining us here. We've always appreciated so much all of your support. And if you don't know who we are, welcome and thank you for dropping in. We started this podcast in honor of the incredible life our bunnies have given to us, and especially in honor of our little Linus bear who crossed the Rainbow Bridge back in June 2022. Their journey and their stories have been so enjoyed by the bunny community, and the buns themselves have always been loved by so many of you that we really wanted to give back by sharing more. Some of the behind-the-scenes details, things that aren't captured by the lens of our camera, and things we didn't ever get around to posting on our Instagram. We hope you'll enjoy listening, that this podcast will give you joy, insight into our lives as bun parents, and maybe you'll even learn a thing or two if you're new to bunnies. Please note, however, that I am not an expert in all things bunny. I am only an expert in all things Rue, Linus, and Timo. So always follow advice from a rabbit-savvy vet or professional if you're ever unsure. And you know what else I've learned in these years of having these three bunnies? Sometimes even the best advice you receive may not be applicable to your bunny. It may work super well for one and not that well for another. Every bunny is so very different. So seek out professional advice, but also really get to know your bun. So, my name is Jessie, the Bun Mom. As mentioned, Rue, Linus, and Timo are our three beloved bunnies. And behind the scenes, we also have Bun Dad Mario. And our bun family lives in Toronto, Canada. We thought we would kick off the first episode with the one who started it all for us, our very first bunny and fur baby, Rue. When we brought Rue home, we never would have imagined the impact she'd create in our lives. She has been a huge catalyst for so much change in our personal lives. Not just in terms of our daily routine, but our views on the world, the products we choose to purchase, the way we choose to eat, the level of compassion we have for all animals, and these are just to name a few. God is also a big part of our lives, and having bunnies helped us to connect with God and all of His creation at a different, even deeper level. Basically, Rue was the one to start it all, and then Linus and Timo continued to push the change further in us. So throughout this podcast, I'm sure we'll touch on many of these experiences and stories, and if you relate to any of them, we would love to hear about it. Let's start with how and why we decided to get a bunny in the first place. We often get asked by friends why we chose a bunny. How did that even come to mind, versus what's more common like a dog or a cat? Mario and I have always wanted a pet, but prior to the pandemic, our lives were so busy. Our schedules were so jam-packed every single day from morning to night. We just knew it wouldn't have been fair to any pet to have to live in an environment where they'd be home on their own a lot or where they wouldn't get a solid daily routine to settle into. We had helped to dog sit for friends and family for short periods of time too, so we had to completely turn over our schedules during those days just to ensure the dogs weren't home alone for too long and that they got lots of love and lots of walks. We loved it and enjoyed having them with us very much, but we also gained more understanding as to the type of commitment it'd be and knew it wasn't a lifestyle we could sustain at that time. We just knew that we wouldn't have been great for parents based on our schedules and availability. So although we always really wanted a pet, we didn't ever seriously explore that option. When the pandemic hit and everything shut down, both of us were home all the time. Bun Dad got to work from home, whereas I got laid off from my full-time job. At that time, prior to being laid off, I was already doing some voice acting on the side and had some regular gigs coming in. So when I got laid off, it actually gave me the opportunity to jump into voice acting full-time and try it out. It ended up working really well for me, and now my full-time job is being a voice actor. That means I get to be home most of the time. I have a little studio at home that I work from, and I'd go into a professional studio in the city a couple of times a week depending on my projects. But before things really opened up during the pandemic, everything was done from home, So life really slowed down and we didn't have to be out and about so much. And that's when we seriously started to consider bringing home a pet. As we were researching, suddenly the thought of having a bunny popped into my head. I think it was because when I was a kid, my parents brought home a rabbit from a farm for my brother and me as our first ever pet. Now, back then, we had absolutely no clue how to properly take care of a rabbit. Whenever I think back on it, it does sadden me, and for a while when we first got Rue, I would often feel extremely guilty and heartbroken about the life that bunny had. Unfortunately, he lived in a cage and rarely got to hop outside of it. He didn't get too much social interaction with us, and eventually he was given away to my grandmother's friend. I totally wish I could turn back time and give that bunny a good and happy life. But the past can't be changed, and now that I know better, I do better. And in a way, I try to honor that bunny's life from my childhood by giving the absolute best to the bunnies I have now. I still have regrets and feel sorrow for that bunny, but I've learned that rather than dwelling on the past, I need to move forward, doing the best I can to not repeat those same mistakes. As a side note, this is a concept I've tried to apply to all areas of my life. I am not my past mistakes. I can always change and continue to grow. I'm not who I was years ago or even who I was yesterday. We can always be better. And many times, we need to be able to let go of our past selves, forgive ourselves, learn from our mistakes, but not let our mistakes define us, and just keep growing into a better person. Nobody is perfect and everyone is learning. So we have to be kind to ourselves and kind to one another. And this knowledge that I'm allowed to change, I'm allowed to be better, I am worthy of becoming better, and I'm not defined by the past or my behavior back then, but on who I choose to be today. This has set me free in so many areas of my life and has made a significant difference in my growth as a person. And I'm really grateful that because of what I've learned and know now, I'm able to give Rue, Linus, and Timo the best life that we're able to offer them. Anyways, that was a little side story of how a pet bunny popped into my head. So we hopped online to do our research, and many of the things that we learned about blew our minds. It was during this researching phase that we really learned about how bunnies should be cared for. Like how they can be and should be free roam, meaning not kept in cages or small enclosures, that they could be litter trained, that they could even do tricks, and that they can be affectionate and cuddly and enjoy being pet. We were amazed and immediately taken with them. And because they didn't need to be taken out for walks and were fully litter trained and go to the bathroom in an actual litter box, they could easily be left at home, which allowed us to still have a little bit of flexibility with our schedules. We did take a lot of time to consider this kind of commitment, and we weighed out what it meant for us to have a bunny that would be with us for 10 to 12 years. We also understood the commitment that it would be in terms of time and financially, knowing that they would need and require exotic vets, and we just felt very willing and very ready. We took some time to research the breed that we wanted, and based on what we read, a lot about the Hollandlop's personality and size, and to be honest, their floppy ears just really sold it for us, and that was what we wanted for our first bunny. So the next step was we started to look around for Hollandlop breeders in the area. And if we knew then what we know now about how many bunnies are dumped and abandoned, how rescues and shelters are beyond capacity with bunnies, we definitely would have looked into adopting first. But we didn't know then that bunnies were the third most dumped pet. If you follow us on Instagram, though, you probably know that our next two bunnies, Linus and Timo, were both rescued and adopted. Linus from an animal shelter and Timo from a rabbit rescue. And we highly encourage anyone who is listening who may be considering getting a bunny or getting another bunny to please look at adopting first. There are so many bunnies in need of their forever home, and there's just not enough space in rescues and shelters to take in new bunnies, which means that many of them are at risk of being euthanized due to no fault of their own. We definitely understand the appeal of going with a breeder, but at this point, seeing how many bunnies desperately need a loving home, I would highly recommend visiting your local shelter or checking in with your local rabbit rescue to find your forever bunny. And there are so many benefits to adopting. The bunnies are usually already spayed or neutered, so you don't have to pay for that or worry about that. Rue's spay was around $400 Canadian for us at that time. And they may already be litter trained or close to it while they were being fostered, so that's a bonus. You may also have a better understanding of their personalities. And you'll be aware of any health issues or concerns that a rabbit may have in advance, whereas from a breeder, you may not really know. But the most important is that adopting saves 2 lives, the life of the bunny that is adopted and the life of another who now gets a space in the rescue and a chance at being adopted themselves. We have absolutely no regrets getting Rue, but we do wish we had been knowledgeable about bunny adoption at that time. So, knowing what we did know at that time, we had contacted several breeders in the province of Ontario in search of a Holland. We were surprised to find that it was very difficult to get a bunny. We had to wait because so many people, I guess, were buying bunnies at that time. We actually weren't expecting to get a bunny for a while after contacting the breeders, and we were a little disappointed. But then one day, one of the breeders directly messaged me and informed me that one of their bunnies that was originally going home with someone, that person decided not to take her anymore, and he asked if we wanted her instead. We saw her pictures and her videos and immediately fell in love. We said yes right away. We had to wait until she reached about 8 weeks old and was safely weaned from her mother before we could pick her up. And during that time, lots of photos and videos were sent to us, and we just couldn't wait to bring her home. Here is a fun fact that actually we've never shared with our bunny community before. Rue's original name given to her by the breeder was Maple. And another interesting fun fact is that all 3 of our bunnies' original names before they came to us started with M-A. So Rue's was Maple, like I said, Linus's name was Marmaduke, and Timo's name was Marshall. Isn't that cool? Okay, maybe it's not that cool, but we thought it was cool. And it's very normal for the names of bunnies to change once they go to their forever homes and get their forever names. In the beginning, though, I would feel guilty for changing their names and feel awkward about it and apologetic about it and would try to explain by saying, we love their original names, but we were set on this new name and really wanted it for them. So I always felt a little bit bad about it until the lady from Timo's rescue, she's so wonderful, she emailed me and said, I love his new name. And of course, we would not be offended. We name everyone and know that when they move on to their forever home, they will gain a new name that suits them even better. I absolutely loved that. We picked the name Rue because I personally love that girl's name. I love all the different spellings for that name as well, R-U-E, R-U, and we landed on R-O-O just because it looked so cute and reminded us of Rue from Winnie the Pooh. There's Kanga and there's little Rue, and we just thought it was so fitting for our bunny. During the time we were waiting to bring home Rue, we did all the preparation to welcome her. It kind of is like welcoming a child home, I imagine. Getting her space ready, ensuring we had the proper food at home and toys, etc. We decided to start her off with a large enclosure that was about 4 feet by 5 feet in our living room. We didn't want to overwhelm her with a huge space right away. Mind you, we live in a 1-bedroom plus den condo, so our space isn't all that big. And we also wanted to potty train her before we started free roaming her. Although we started her off in an enclosed area, it was still large enough for her to run around, do lots of zoomies and binkies. And inside the enclosure, we laid out some carpets, we'd purchased an adorable boho-style tent, we had a little corner litter box, which we would soon discover would be too small, and later on we switched to a large cat litter box instead, and we put a hay tunnel inside with some other chew toys. Closer to the date of bringing her home, we purchased some Timothy hay and alfalfa hay, which is okay for baby bunnies only, and a bag of pellets. We also researched which exotic vets were closest to us and were reputable, since we knew that within the first weeks of having her, we'd for sure be bringing her to the vet for her first checkup. We got quite lucky as we have a vet clinic that specializes only in exotic animals about a 10-minute drive away from us. So we were ready, and we were excited. We would watch her videos and look at her photos every single day. And then at night before we went to bed, we would continue to look at other videos of Holland Lobs and bunnies and constantly gush and say, "Look at their little noses moving so fast." We just were so excited to finally have our first fur baby. Then on June 13th, we went to pick up our baby girl. We had a carrier purchased from Amazon and it was ready to go. And we drove to the breeder's home, which was about 40 minutes away. He brought Rue out, and this was our first time meeting her in person. He placed her onto the porch to greet us, and she was so small and so tiny. So much smaller than how she looked in the videos and photos. We were dying of the cuteness. We were actually a little worried that she'd run off the porch and out into the streets, but she was a really good girl, and she just stayed on the porch, being curious, hopping around. After chatting a little bit with the breeder, we gently placed Rue into her carrier and went on our way home. Inside the car, I opened the lid of the carrier and was petting her gently, but I was trying not to touch her too much since she was new to us and she was also super terrified because it was her first car ride. And we also didn't know what we should do really, so we were trying to keep the car extremely quiet and create as much of a calming environment for her. So we weren't playing any music, we were talking in very low voices, and it literally felt like we were bringing a newborn baby home or something. So when we arrived back home, we let her into her space and gave her a few minutes to hop around and acquaint herself. After a little while, we couldn't resist capturing this very special moment for us. So we set up the camera, I gently picked her up, and we took a little family photo. We were now a family of 3. And after this initial time of picking her up, we really did try to minimize handling her as much as we could while we were working on building her trust with us. And she was just so cute. We were constantly gushing and couldn't stop watching her. Thank goodness it was the pandemic time and we really had nowhere else to be because all we wanted to do was be with her 24/7. When we first saw her clean herself, oh my goodness, we literally melted. I think you bun parents can agree that one of the cutest things in this entire world is a bunny cleaning themselves, especially when they're cleaning their little faces and their little ears. We have a video of baby Rue cleaning herself, and it is still one of our favorite videos of her to watch to this day. When she started to feel comfortable in her space, she started to do little zoomies and binkies, and one of Rue's favorite ways to do binkies is doing them sideways. So she loved to binky into and out of her tent sideways. It was so cute and entertaining, and her little body zooming around the space was absolutely adorable. We were really glad that she was happy in her new home. Potty training pretty much began immediately, and it was actually a lot easier than we expected. We put her hay inside a hay bag and hung it over her litter box, and since bunnies poop as they eat, she naturally did her business in that spot. When she did pee outside of the litter box, we cleaned it up with paper towel and placed that soiled paper towel into her litter box. Then we wiped up the accident spot with some vinegar. I think she only peed outside of her litter box twice, and then within 3 days, she was fully litter trained. That's when we opened up the enclosure and let her explore the rest of our home. And it was so much fun watching her explore her new surroundings and seeing her be curious. Rue has always been very curious and quite brave. She still to this day, loves when we move furniture around, when we change the space, bring in new things and items for her to explore. She does zoomies and binkies every time that happens. We very closely monitored her as she explored, and we saw that she always went back to her litter box to pee and poo. So we felt confident to completely remove the fences and let her free roam. Having a free-roaming bunny is one of the most enjoyable parts of having a bunny. Just seeing them hop around everywhere, following you from room to room, finding them exploring and napping in different places. Bun Dad and I would often turn to each other and just say, "I can't believe we have a little bunny hopping around our home." To this day, we still say that to each other. I can't believe we have bunnies, just hanging out in our house, hopping around and following us. It really is so adorable. Having a large space for bunnies is really critical, and we get asked this once in a while over our Instagram. It's needed for their mental and physical well-being. It gives them time to do enough exercise. It allows them to not feel secluded and to have more interactions with their bun parents so they don't feel lonely. Bunnies can get depression too. They're very social creatures. And it's lots of mental stimulation for them since they have so much more space and things to explore and play with. Just make sure your space is bunny-proofed. So, what was our daily routine like with this baby bunny? Well, Rue quickly learned our schedule and routine, and since it was during the pandemic, our routine was pretty stable. Before I jump into how we start her day, though, I really wanted to talk about something super cute that she always did as a baby. Whenever it was our bedtime, she would know, and she would run into our bedroom with us and sleep with us. She would start off sleeping either beside our bed or underneath, and then at some point in the middle of the night, she'd jump up into our bed and sleep at our feet. This meant that Bun Dad and I were pretty sleep-deprived for a while because we were terrified to accidentally roll into her or kick her. So we'd stay awake laying there stiffly without moving so that we wouldn't disturb her. Worth it. For all the cuteness, totally worth it. Okay, let's start from the morning. Rue would get her plate of veggies for breakfast first thing in the morning when we woke up. And she learned early on how to jump into our bed and zoomy all over our sleeping bodies to wake us up between 4 to 5 a.m. to get our breakfast even earlier. Even though we were totally sleep-deprived, it was so cute that we didn't mind. Eventually, we got her to be a little more patient and wait until a later time in the mornings for breakfast. And breakfast is an assortment of fresh veggies on rotation. So we'd give about 3 different kinds each day. Lettuces, herbs like dill and cilantro, red dandelion, escarole, arugula, but we always introduced new vegetables in small amounts at a time, just to ensure her stomach could handle it. So we'd give a little piece of the vegetable, wait 24 hours, we'd be on poop patrol, and if all was good with her poops and her behavior, then we'd give her a larger piece the following time. After breakfast, she'd get some of her pellets in our stacking cups. We give a total of 1 tablespoon of pellets each day, and we'd split that 1 tablespoon. Some of it would go into the stacking cups in the morning, and then the rest are served throughout the day by hand feeding. We love the stacking cups because it keeps them stimulated and their brain active from working for their food. And they have a lot of fun with them. Rue has been coined the Smash Queen by us when it comes to stacking cups because of her aggressive and speedy approach to unstacking. She also is quite skillful and does some pretty impressive trick shots once in a while. We ensure that Rue always had 24-hour access to fresh hay stuffed into her hay bag. Although alfalfa hay was totally okay for baby bunnies, we were already weaning her off of alfalfa hay right away when she got here. So we did a mix of Timothy hay and alfalfa hay, just because alfalfa is totally addictive for bunnies. Bunnies, as most of you may know, are most active during dawn and dusk, so we spent a lot of that time playing with Rue, teaching her tricks, and I'll share more about tricks in a later episode, and just bonding with her. And in the beginning, that was a lot of just sitting in her space, letting her get curious and approach us, and us gently petting her. Typically after breakfast, stacking cups, and playing and getting pets, she will have her afternoon deep sleep until the evening. And the evening was when we saw a lot of her zoomies and binkies around the house. What was really funny and cute was when she would do zoomies on our little couch and also on our dining room bench, which isn't that long and it's quite narrow, but she would just go back and forth, zooming over it. It gave us many, many good laughs. The benefit of bringing Rue home during the pandemic was that we were always home with her. So the initial time of potty training her, bonding, and socializing with her, getting her used to our space and ensuring she was safe roaming around the house was a lot easier because we were always with her. When things had opened back up again and we were out more often and gone during parts of the day, we were already really confident and at peace with leaving her at home fully free roaming. And also by that time, she had a friend to accompany her, which was great and kept her out of a lot of trouble. We'll share more about Linus and adopting him in one of our next episodes. Having Rue being a 24/7 free-roam bunny helped a lot with building a strong bond with her. Rue was pretty comfortable with us petting her within the first few weeks, but it felt like it took a good solid 4 months for her to really fully trust us. It was around that time when we saw that she'd be constantly approaching us to request pets, whereas before it'd be us to slowly and gently approach her. This is a very personal thing and is different for each bunny. Linus had immediately bonded with us when he came home and seemed to fully trust us right away, pretty much by the second day. And then Timo was just about a week or two. So this really surprised us actually, since both of them were rescues and were dumped by their previous owners. We thought it would have taken them longer to trust us as humans, but that wasn't the case. So every bunny is different. The day we brought Rue home was the day we started Rue's Instagram and created her handle, Little Loppy Rue. We just liked how the name rolled off our tongues. We had also considered Rue the Holland Lop, but we preferred the playfulness of Little Loppy Rue. And that was the same day we posted her first photo on the account, on June 13th, 2020, captioning it, "Welcome home, Rue." And that started my own personal journey and passion of photographing my bunnies. I started off with just using my phone to take the photos, and then as my passion grew, I began to use professional cameras that Bun Dad already had. He is a videographer and a filmmaker. I loved trying to capture all the precious little moments and all their different expressions and behaviors. It became my little passion project. And as I took more photos and played around with them, I began to understand the style of editing I preferred and started to edit my photos so that they all had a similar aesthetic. It was like an art project for me and an outlet for my creativity. I loved it. With time, many wonderful people followed along on Rue's journey and built up the amazing circle of support and love that we have now. Some of you listening may have been with us since the very beginning, and there are no words to describe how much that means to us. You've been here with us as Rue grew older. You were there when she found her soulmate Linus. You were there to share our grief when we lost him, and there to welcome and embrace Timo fully into our Bun family. And those of you who tagged along at later parts of our journey are loved and appreciated no less by us. We cannot ever express just how much all of your love, support, thoughts, prayers, and care have meant to us. From the bottom of all of our hearts, thank you. You are a big reason why we started this podcast. We've just felt so much love from all of you and wanted to give you something more from us, from our little Loppy Rue family. So that is the story of how we first brought Rue Baby home. We hope all of you enjoyed listening to our experience. We'd love to hear from you. What did you think of today's episode? Was there something that interested you or surprised you? Or if you have a bunny, what was it like for you to bring your first bunny home? Or do you have any questions that you'd like us to address in a future episode? Let us know by sending us a message over at our podcast Instagram, The Bun Mom Life, or send us an email at thebunmomlife@gmail.com. Have a wonderful rest of the day or evening wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye!